Another week, another edition of the Email Design Podcast. Welcome in. We are your hosts. I'm Kevin Mandeville.
And I'm Jason Rodriguez.
And this is an international podcast today. I'm coming at you live from Stuttgart, Germany, visiting one of my coworkers. Jason, you're back in Detroit, yeah?
Yep. Still at home, so no Germany trips for me in the near future, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, no, I forgot to pack my nice microphone. So sorry, you're going to have to deal with my laptop audio for today, people. Apologies for that. But we'll have to make do with that. And with that, we got to kick off. We got to get back into the news, Jason. We've done like a bunch of Q&A rapid fire podcasts for a few straight podcasts. So let's get back into some of the news. And we just had, the biggest email holiday of the year, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that whole week. It's becoming a whole week now. It's a week-long extravaganza. And one of the biggest talking points that really came out of this was this email that Brooklinen sent. So over at architecturaldigest.com, they had this story. Did Brooklinen just send the most genius marketing email ever? And so essentially they sent this out on, I think this was even like the day before. It was like the Thursday. And what Brooklinen did is they had the subject line of this email in brackets, needs approval, and then it said early access. And it was essentially this forwarded looking type of email that said, hey team, really excited about the big sale for tomorrow. So they sent it out on Thursday in preparation for Black Friday, and everything should be ready to go. Can you guys click around through the links below to make sure everything's working properly on the site? See the test email below. Signed Mark, digital marketing intern, and then it had the actual email. So this actually was made the news rounds on the PR front and whatnot, and then it got asked as to whether this was a true mistake or whether this was a planned marketing strategy. And there was an update that said that this was indeed the strategy behind this actual campaign. So Jason, gotta put it to you. Did you like this or not like this email from Brooklinen?
I'm definitely a little bit torn. I think the concept's clever, but I'm not a big fan of, these fake kind of emails because they're fairly transparent. And I don't like the idea of being deceptive to subscribers and deceiving them into, clicking through whatever links. It just seems very, deceitful, but clever still. It's an interesting marketing idea, but I'm not necessarily a huge fan of these kind of tactics. I know our colleague Chad White kind of brought up the topic of can spam rules and whether or not this would violate them. So I think that's definitely another consideration. So there's a couple of things kind of weighing into it, but overall, I will agree that it is clever, but I'm not a huge fan of these kind of techniques. How about you?
I think if you're the first person to ever do this, it's clever for that first time. What I don't want to see happen, and I don't think that this is really anything new. I feel like I've seen this before somewhere, but this should not become a thing. So let's not do this for all future email marketing. This is not a best practice by any means whatsoever.
But people are going to copy this right and left, so we're going to see.
Yes, and it shouldn't, because you really, what you're trying to do with your email marketing, you're trying to get and earn your subscribers' trust first and foremost, right?
Exactly.
And this, obviously, if you've built up trust, you can do something like this potentially, but this is really a big no-no in my mind because you're really breaking trust with the user through this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what I really hate more, which is more of a email industry, is the fact that the signature on this was from Mark, digital marketing intern. I mean, that is just so harmless to the entire community that sort of discredits email marketing as a profession. That really rubbed me the wrong way more than the forwarded message. Like I really don't like that because again, it just kind of puts down the profession and the legitimacy of it. And it's far from the truth. And especially a brand like Brooklinen, they probably have a team that actually does this stuff. So I didn't like seeing that personally.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that until you just brought it up, but I totally agree with you that Brooklyn's kind of hurting the field with stuff like this because it does kind of lead to that kind of stereotype that, email marketers are spammers or just inconsiderate or, don't have the attention to detail that other industries have. So I totally agree that it's kind of harmful.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, so
I don't ever want to stifle doing new things, creating,
yeah,
taking
totally.
chances, innovating. So, I mean, I haven't seen anything like this from Brooklinen before, per se. Not that I really subscribe to them. So, I mean, I'm not going to, it's okay for stuff like this to happen once in a while. And sometimes you can miss the mark. But, we got to be cognizant of these types of things at all times, right?
Yep. I just hope this doesn't, like you said, kind of proliferate across the industry and get really common. It's kind of like the regarding in the subject line. The first couple of people to do it is probably really clever, but now everybody does, and
Right.
it's just an annoyance. So hopefully that's not the case, and we can kind of, enjoy it for what it is now. Recognize that it's clever, but not the greatest tactic, and kind of move on from there and focus our efforts elsewhere. All right, moving on. Justin Koo over at Fresh Inbox reported an interesting bug in Apple Mail where the last image in an email, if the image is the very last thing in the actual code before you're closing like body and HTML tags, then Apple Mail will not display that final image. So this is really interesting because it could have implications, like Mark Robbins brought up in the comments, on tracking pixels. So if you're using tracking pixels to get those email analytics, which is how all email analytics work, so you are using them if you are looking at those stats, it could affect the outcome of those analytics because if it's not loading that tracking pixel, you're not going to be getting those analytics back. So this is interesting. It's, I think Justin Koo's smart to point out that it's probably not a common occurrence to be happening in email with actual like design images, because most emails have some sort of like footer where your unsubscribe links, your address, all that can spam type stuff lives. So that's actual like HTML text. So the likelihood of having that last image being in your email campaign and getting stripped through Apple Mail is pretty unlikely. But Mark Robbins, I think that's a killer point, as if you are using tracking pixels as the very last thing before that closing body tag, which I would wager a lot of people probably do, then you might want to move that tracking pixel up to the top of your email instead to make sure that it loads properly in Apple Mail and you get all those stats back from Apple Mail.
Yeah, super weird bug. I haven't seen this myself in action. I do like the simple fix. Instead of having to do like a separate image, that would be like the dummy image that breaks. It seems that if you just add any type of text after that, even just a simple period, it'll fix it. So you could always just do a simple period that gets hidden against the background color of whatever your layout is.
Exactly.
Super annoying. I haven't seen it. I wouldn't be overly worried about it. But yeah, if it's going to affect your tracking, then that's gonna cause a lot of problems, right? So we definitely got to watch out for that. And weird it's coming from Apple. What's up with that?
Yeah. Apple's had just, honestly, a shit like a week or two of just weird software stuff going on. And I feel like this might be part of that, is like their kind of lack of quality control in their software. But hopefully it gets fixed. Hopefully it's not kind of widespread issue. And if it is only happening in Apple Mail, hopefully we'll get to it. Justin did report it, so we'll see if it gets fixed by them. But just something to keep in mind. And yeah, add some text underneath that image or move your tracking pixel up to the top of your email, and you should be good to go.
All right, Jason, you wrote a great article over on accessibility in email on CSS tricks. So talk to us about what the contents of this article is.
Yeah, so I was really happy to see this up on CSS Tricks. For those that aren't familiar, CSS Tricks is kind of one of the longer running blogs for web designers and web developers. Chris Coyer's been posting tons of great articles. He has a great team over there, but it's a very web and front end kind of focused community. So I was really excited to get this out there because it's exposing them more to, the realities of email marketing, email design, which I get the feeling that a lot of web designers, web developers don't like tackling or don't think about it that much. So being able to talk about accessibility and email design to that audience has been really, really cool. So in the article, I just kind of collected some of the best tips for making your emails more accessible. Talked about things like using more accessible tables, using that ARIA role of presentation that Mark Robbins has been talking about for a while now. linked out I would love his wonderful example of that screen reader reading an accessible table and a less accessible table. So I was sure to include that. He's been doing some great work around accessibility, so I want to give him a shout out there. Talked a little bit about using live text as opposed to all image-based emails, and then using alternative text and styled alternative text to make sure those emails are accessible and that content's still readable and on brand, even when images are disabled. And then kind of wrapped it up with talking about even if you're not doing all that stuff or doing these interesting coding techniques or responsive emails, you should still design for all different devices by using this kind of mobile aware approach to email design, where you keep things like the layout more simple, CTAs big and tappable across screen sizes, text and images and stuff large enough to read even if emails are scaled down. So yeah, just collection kind of roundup of some of the best tips to make emails more accessible. There's definitely always, with the web design community, a couple of good comments in the article and some good discussion going on over there. So definitely check it out. I got good responses from this and a lot of shout outs for it. So I'm happy to get in front of that audience.
Yeah, it seems like there's been some good comments, some good discussion. And shout out to Chris Coyer. We had him as a guest on the podcast. I forget what number it is. It was
a while ago.
It was a little while ago. Definitely go back in the archives. It was a great podcast to listen to. But it's good to see. We definitely, I think, need more email and web cross-pollination on educating each other on what's the latest and greatest stuff. So, that's what I think. That's what I take away from this. It's good to see stuff like this. And if you don't know what CSS tricks is, you've been living under a rock. I mean, this is
missing out.
Like one of the Bibles of web design. If you've Googled anything on HTML or CSS, you should have stumbled upon this at some point. So definitely share the article, spread it, share it, get involved in the comments. Break down any myths, as is common for things to happen like that. All right, so we're just going to take a quick second here before we get into some other hacks and other resources. Let you know you can catch the podcast at emaildesignpodcast.com. So all these articles and links we're talking about, you can get it all right there. You can subscribe on SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes. Tweet along with the hashtag #EmailDesignPodcast. And we have a great offer for you from Litmus. It's a free 14-day trial. You can just go to litmus.com/giftcard, input the coupon code podcast, and you can test your email in. I think we're over 90 email clients now. It's crazy. We just keep releasing them one after another. So we've got everything from, we even got the iPhone 10 now, or X, however you prefer to call it. We got like Outlook for Android. We've got so many of the latest, greatest apps. Samsung, Android. We've got it all. So you want to make sure as you're testing things like this, maybe you're trying to do cooler things. You're trying to make your email accessible. Maybe you're trying to, troubleshoot around some Apple Mail bugs. Go in there, upload your email into Litmus. You can render test it, see how it looks in all the clients, make sure it looks good. And then you can even do things like check your images, check your links, make sure nothing's broken. You don't want to go through all this hassle, send out an email and then it's broken, right? Because then it's embarrassing. You get a bad subscriber experience. Your users, they might report you as spam. If they even take the time, they'll unsubscribe. So you got all this hard work and effort that you want to put into your email that creates a great experience, and you want to make sure there's no hiccups when it goes out the door. So that's what Litmus is for. It's the full email creative platform. Make sure you get everything from creation all the way through testing, and then you send it through your ESP. So go to litmus.com/giftcard, input the coupon code podcast for a free 14-day trial of Litmus. And Jason, this next one is an interesting one to talk about here.
Yeah, so a researcher named Sabri Haddouche was doing some investigation into exploits within email clients. So he set up this site called Mailsploit.com, kind of going over his findings. So it's interesting because he found that you can actually spoof the sender name, which is kind of an old school common thing back in like the 90s and early 2000s that you could do, where you could trick people into thinking that an email that you sent was from somebody else. So he found out that there are over 30 different email clients in popular use, including ones like Apple Mail, Mozilla Thunderbird, and some Microsoft clients, Yahoo Mail, allow you to spoof that email address and break through things like DMARC, those different certifications set up that are supposed to prevent this kind of exploit. So he used a kind of old school technique, this old I guess this old specification called RFC 1342 from 1992 that allows you to encode characters inside of email headers, and that's how he ended up spoofing these email addresses. So he made it look like it was coming from the president of the U.S., and those email clients rendered that properly in the email client, so people would think they were getting an email from Donald Trump, which I know he might spend his time doing something like that. I don't know, but really interesting to see how even today these email clients aren't fully secure. Spammers and just shady people can still do things like this, like spoofing those email addresses. And he went on, excuse me, a little bit later to talk about code injection as well, and how some of these email clients are susceptible to code injection, which is far more dangerous than the spoofing behavior. So that's where, these people could insert some sort of code that could infect your computer or could gather things like passwords, email addresses, kind of personal information once you start interacting with that email inside of that client. So really interesting research from Sabri. He did notify all of these different companies about the exploit. And a lot of them have fixed it or are working on fixing it, but there are still some holdouts that haven't even gotten back to them or have just closed that issue and said, we're not going to fix it. It's not our issue to worry about, so definitely some interesting stuff there. I thought it was interesting on the Mac side, both Spark and Airmail, which are two relatively popular email clients in the Mac world, are susceptible to the code injection. So definitely something to keep aware of, more from a personal standpoint than, an email marketing one, but some really cool research to just see how susceptible to kind of this diabolical email techniques that some of these email clients are.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to share this to show, I know we always complain, why don't you support simple HTML and CSS? It's because we're dealing with people, who are not in it for the love of email. They're doing it for malicious reason.
Yep, exactly.
And so it's activities when you find stuff like this that you're like, oh, geez, this is why email clients are so concerned.
This is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have nice things.
They're so worried about security because of things like this. Now, luckily, this is an initiative to help, right, which is good. But I also think apart from, just trying to gain better understanding as to why email clients are concerned about certain things, I also think it's a good example, again, of hacking your way to better support for things, right? So in this case, it's hacking to help, improve the existing features of these email clients and make it a better experience. So, if we can continue to do that, even to further enhance HTML and CSS support, or even if it's JavaScript support of some kind and how that may come to fruition,
sure.
I think that's a good example of things we could do. So it'd be nice. Again, I think it comes down to definitely go out and hack more and discover more. It's only more helpful in the long run, as long as you're on the right side here.
Yep, exactly.
Resource I want to share here, nothing too fancy, but it popped up. It's this new resource called letters.email. So letters.email, and all it is, it's just a simple directory of email newsletters. That's it. And it's just a tile design, sort of grid layout of all these different newsletters that it's aggregating. You can search for them, and then they're tagging all of them as well so that you can sort of search by category. But what's really cool is that you can also click in the top right to add a newsletter as well to submit to Google Form. So there is a bit of a manual curation aspect going on. But hey, a nice way to go and discover some of the newsletters out there. One of Litmus's newsletters, run by our very own engineering team, .NET News, is actually the first one on the site that's showcased. So shout out to the engineering team. And if you like .NET, check that out, as I don't really know what goes on that newsletter or understand anything that goes on there, but it is highly regarded, I do believe.
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah, I actually come from a .NET shop prior to Litmus, so I'm familiar with the world and do subscribe to it. I always like seeing Brendan's face pop up in my inbox. But yeah, definitely a great resource if you're looking to subscribe to new stuff, which as an email marketer designer, you absolutely should, so that you can kind of keep up with what other folks are doing. This is a huge resource for you. I'm looking through here right now, and there's at least a dozen that I'm going to go through and subscribe to when we get off this podcast. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's letters without the last email, which is a cool domain name for sure. This great article we wanted to feature from Lee Munroe over at htmlemail.io, another great domain name. Lee breaks down how to customize Shopify email templates. So this is actually really interesting because I was looking into using Shopify for powering, my latest like book and video release. But I did not end up going through with it because one of the things that I had concerns about was updating their email templates for things like receiving orders, shipping notifications, receipt emails, all of that kind of e-commerce stuff that goes along with selling things online. They had some nice looking templates built in, but I couldn't find good information about how to actually update those email templates to fit in with like my overall brand and the site style that I was developing. So I ended up not going with that. So I kind of wish Lee had published this a little bit earlier. I had known about these kind of tools that he's kind of calling out here, these techniques, because it would have probably swayed my my decision to go with Shopify or not go with Shopify. But he's just breaking down how to get into Shopify, which is a massive, massive e-commerce platform that a lot of people use. Go through all of those kind of default templates that Shopify gives you. So again, like order confirmations, canceled orders, refunds, invoices, all that stuff. And then use Shopify essentially as a CDN for hosting things like your images and updating the provided HTML using their liquid variable, their templating language that Shopify works on, and then uploading those templates to Shopify so that you can get these awesome looking, nice, custom built email templates that are then powered by Shopify. So this is something you'd use separate from, like MailChimp or Campaign Monitor. These aren't things that you can really turn off in the Shopify world because they provide these required transactional emails for that e-commerce platform. But it's a great overview of how to customize those things so that you can get that kind of bespoke, good looking, branded email that you want that you couldn't normally get, which is awesome. So kudos to Lee for writing out this awesome resource. I'm sure a lot of people are going to find it really useful.
Yeah, if you're using Shopify, I mean, it's perfect. And there's the ability to send test emails. You can always send those off, test them in with Litmus as well. So nice and easy way to use Litmus as well. And if you've never used Liquid before, by the way, it's pretty sweet. I know Taxi for email uses it as well as their templating language. But yeah, Liquid is a good templating language. It's very easy to pick up and learn. All right, ending off today with our email of the week. Seeing as we're just getting to review some of the Black Friday stuff, we're going to go with the Black Friday email over from the team at Nest, and they always have gorgeous emails and product shots. And this one, they swaggerjack Mark Robbins in a good sense. They basically did his, full interactive checkout experience sort of within an email, and they were able to recreate that. So I love it because it was an all black email matched with the whole Black Friday theme. And they had 4 of their products that they were showcasing. So the thermostat, the indoor cam, Nest Protect, and the outdoor cam. And each of those had their deals, and you could click on any of these to add to cart. And what would happen is it would then show up down below where you could select if there was an ability to select what color you wanted. So this thermostat example here, you could select between stainless steel, black, white, and then you could either add another one to the cart as well, or you could either increase or decrease the quantity of the number of items that you wanted to select. And what is really nifty as well, and what I thought was super smart when Mark debuted this back at the Email Design Conference a few years ago, was that it actually has a real-time calculator for it. So they're using CSS counters to update the text here, the pricing information. So as you add or decrease the amount of items, the prices get updated as well. So I just thought that's really, really cool. And then you could click to proceed to checkout and sort of input your information. Other nice things about this, it is responsive. It's sort of, I guess I should say it's really more adaptive than it is responsive. But what was really nice about this mobile view, which I'll show you here, is that they were able to get the pricing information to show up down on the footer. And this was really designed for a mobile experience, as that's probably where their audience is heavy. They're probably a mobile first audience. So you can see it in the design, but it's nice that they were able to make it fixed. Again, there's issues with doing position fixed in email. So the way they were able to do this is they essentially made it one div here at the top and one div here down at the bottom. This one down at the bottom, they were able to display it as a table. And then this div here at the top, they were able to add an overflow of scroll to it. And this was still able to work nicely on mobile that way. So if I just jump into the previews and show it off here, you can see if I come into, let's say, on iOS, some of the iPhone stuff, you'll see that it's fixed right down at the bottom. And all they did was they just did a max height. It was 400 something pixel value, so it would never go higher than what your typical phone would be. But I thought this was super impressive, Jason. I mean, Mark's was really a proof of concept and a demo when he showed it off at the conference a few years ago. But this is an actual real life implementation version with the real brand, which was refreshing to see.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. Like you said, we've seen this kind of in concept form for a long time now, but it's amazing to see real brands out there in the wild using these techniques for their customers and allowing them to go through this really cool checkout process. And I think it's really clever too, because Nest is a very high-tech company, obviously. They have very tech-savvy users, so they're really taking that knowledge of their customer base and they're putting their techniques to work for them. I think they can make a safe assumption that they have a lot of iPhone users that will be able to take advantage of these techniques because Apple Mail renders this stuff really well. So I think that's really clever on their part, being able to use these techniques, knowing their audience, know they can get away with them, and providing that much better of an experience for their Black Friday email. So
the only thing
great job.
I think about for something like this, so I mean, we did something similar to a checkout experience for our conference this past year, but we did a lot of pre-sale promotion around that to prepare, our past attendees and customers who typically go to make a purchase at a specific point. With a brand that's as big as Nest, I wonder how successful this was. If this is just sort of an out of the blue email, and I guess Black Friday is a good day to do it just because a lot of people are looking for deals anyways, but I wonder if there was any type of pre-sale promotion or not, or just sort of how this does when this gets sent out of the blue with sort of no context or preparation beforehand. You know what I mean? And I would have liked to have seen the sale be like a different color to stand out a little bit more or something.
That's the thing that kind of stood out to me, is they have this like $50 off, $60 off, but it's the same white. It's a little bit more bold, a little bit bigger typeface, but it's not really noticeable. So I think from a design standpoint, they could have set that off a little bit more so that you can understand that you are getting these deals. But the checkout, the actual card is cool because it has the original price that gets crossed out for the new price, which is a great indicator there.
And by the way, I mean, if you're wondering how this is all done, it looks pretty complex, and the code definitely sort of looks it that way too. But these are all just done using checkboxes and radio buttons, and just updating what displays based on what checkbox or radio button is selected. So something like this group of color options, that's just a radio buttons group because only one can be selected at a time. Up and down is you're doing checkboxes or something. It is complex, but once you wrap your head around this, because I've done this a lot more, it becomes a lot simpler. It's just weird because checkboxes, radio buttons are typically not how you should be doing click events. So it's a little backwards with your mind. You're not used to doing it that way, but it's definitely doable.
I hope people do check out this email and the code behind it, because I think that's a misconception we need to get beyond, is that interactive email is like massively complex and it's too hard for most people to do. I would say just strip out the styling and things like this, look at the underlying functionality, and it is pretty easy. And then on top of that, you're just styling that content and making it look good. So hopefully people do kind of look through this, pick through it, play around with it, and adapt it.
I mean, it's only 1,500 lines.
See more stuff like this.
Which, I mean, I get is a lot. It's a lot for an email, but
not bad.
It's not like it's 5,000 or 10,000. It's only 1,500 lines. So you can do it, peeps.
Yep.
It's all good. So shout out to Nest. That was nice to see, and I'm eager to see if they share their findings on it. All right, another edition of the Email Design Podcast down. Reminder, all episodes, just head over to emaildesignpodcast.com. Subscribe to the podcast on SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes. You can get it as soon as the podcast drops. That way, every single week. tweet along with the hashtag Email Design Podcast. And don't forget, we have a trial, 14-day trial of Litmus. Just go to litmus.com/gift card, coupon code podcast. All right, Email Geeks, we will see you next week.